The Penre Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The Third Level of Learning. http://wespenre.com. The Third Level of Learning. Paper number 3, Channeled Entities Part I. The Harvesters of Souls. By Penre, Sunday, February 10, 2013. Revised, Tuesday, February 12, 2013. Part 3. 1.2.4. The Hybridization of Mankind and its Implications. Now that we know the main topics upon which the Cassios agree with the former sources we've mentioned, let's go through some more distinct information that is not necessarily unique to the Cassios, but more rare and important in respect to what we're going to discuss in the future. The first thing is cloning. The Cassios are warning us from these things on many occasions, which makes me think that this version of our future selves, the Cassios, that is, may very well come out of the machine kingdom, in which cloning will be a big part. In a transcript from 2010, the discussion circles around abductions. Laura is asking the Cassios what the purpose is with the alien abductions. First of all, which we have discussed elsewhere, the abductions are not always alien in nature. The most common are abductions done by the military or the military and ETS in conjunction. One of the major operations, according to the Cassios, is not only to create clones, but to create what they call replacements. And with replacements they mean replacements of us. Listen to this. You see, if one desires to create a new race, what better way than to mass hybridize, then mass reincarnate? Especially when the host species is so forever ignorant, controlled, and anthropocentric. What a lovely environment for total destruction and conquest and replacement, see. And what kind of hybrids do they have in mind? Well, we have discussed that too, but once again, they want to create an enhanced human, a new species that is more evolved, but still has the fire of the goddess intact, and in which they, the Syrians, can incarnate, so they can experience all the wonders possible in our divine bodies. This, the Syrians have one thing in common with those who think like me, who want to evolve our bodies and minds so we can use our body potentials to their maximum. The difference, however, is that I and my like-minded want to do it without using technology. But that is not all of it, and it's not what I think the Cassios are talking about. Most alien abductions are orchestrated by the Greys, who in this case are, who? Well, whom have the Greys often been seen together with? Yes, the Syrians in human bodies, the so-called Nordics. Let's think of it this way, once the Syrians are established here, they can genetically manipulate human bodies and use them here in 3D, but what kind of bodies would be optimal for the Syrians to use when they travel long distances in their hollowed-out craft? There are currently top-secret projects, leaked by whistleblowers, where scientists are working on creating a hybrid which is well suited for space travel outside the solar system. And how does this hybrid look like? It looks almost exactly like the grey alien we are so used to seeing in drawings, science fiction movies, and all over the internet. Why would they look like the Greys? Because it has shown that this kind of body is one of those best suited for space travel due to its resilience and ability to adapt. It can also successfully withstand radiation in space, long term. This is the body NASA and other more secret space agencies are planning on using in the future for interstellar travel. All they need is the technology to transfer a soul from a human body to the Grey. Once that is done, we're good to go. Of course, we also need an interstellar spaceship which can go through stargates, at least as long as we're keeping things on a 3D level. What I am trying to say here is that what about if the Greys that have been seen together with the Nordics are no less than Syrians in interstellar spacesuits? As above, so below. The only thing the Syrians need to do is to transfer soul essence to the Grey body and they are ready to go. Not to confuse these Greys with real Greys, however, who exist as well. Many say that Greys are very common in this galaxy and the next, the Andromeda. They have a better survival potential than let's say the humanoid body. The Syrians know this and seem to have managed to hybridize their own bodies with that of the Greys, some say they used the Greys from Zeta Reticuli as templates, and use them to travel between the stars. But why do they need to experiment with human bodies here on Earth and mess with our DNA again in this respect? If they want humans to be space travelers in the future, and perhaps build an army, why not use the Sirian/Zeta template to transport human souls into? The reason is possibly that the Sirian/Zeta hybrid has a problem when they are coming to Earth. We see them on the surface every now and then, but sooner rather than later they have to leave. They can't handle the effects from our sun for a very long time, as it seems. Some Sirians were ordered to stay a long time ago, and some were left behind for unknown reasons. These Greys had to move underground, and there is where people like Phil Snyder found them and started battling with them decades ago. They are still down there. Keep in mind that the Grey template is not like a real spacesuit that you can take on and off. When a Grey hybrid is stuck here, they are stuck with the hybrid body, because they transferred soul essence from a real Sirian body into a Grey template, which now became their body until they have the chance to switch back. The Sirians don't want to face this problem when humans are transferring their soul essence to a Zeta template, so they need to experiment with human DNA and mix it with the Zetas so humans in Grey spacesuits can live on Earth as well. Then they clone the improved body type. This whole scenario could very well be the reason why sources like the Cassiopaeans and the Pleiadians suggest we don't start a big cloning process. It will affect them negatively in the future. This is one major reason for abductions. Earth is going to be a strange place only a few decades into the future if the Sirians get what they want. First, we are going to have normal humans like we have today, but much fewer of them. Then we're going to have human hybrids who look almost identical to the Zeta Greys, but that's not enough. Studies have shown that medical research teams, taking order from the global elite, put nanoparticles in pharmaceuticals. In practice, this means that people who take certain medicine, so far it's mainly antidepressants that are affected, are going to have their body structure slowly but surely altered, and so also their DNA. If this technology speeds up like it's supposed to do, we will see many human cyborgs by the year 2034, apparently. In case this article is correct, some of us are going to experience this in our current lifetime. Things like this signifies the extension of the machine kingdom that many people are going to find attractive at first, until they notice, much too late, that it's the worst trap they have ever sat in, perhaps since the beginning of time. There are more reasons for kidnapping people than we may think, so let me mention a few more. The following is not the most common example, but important. The Orions were kidnapping children in the beginning to the mid-1970s and experimented on them. Later on in life, these kids remember the little grey men who stood over them at the operation table, and they told their parents that strange little men were running around outside the house, or even inside the house. No one else could see them. The Orions wanted 12 candidates for the Maitreya, i.e. a new messiah, whom is supposed to act as the messiah of the new age. The Old Theosophical Society, founded by Madame Helena Blavatsky in the 1800s, and who channeled the ascended masters of the Great White Brotherhood, foresaw such a person coming into being at a later time. Today, Benjamin Creme, who is also connected to the Theosophists and the Great White Brotherhood, has made it his life mission to find this Maitreya. He has mentioned a few people whom he thought could be the candidates, and one of them was even seen together with George Bush Sr., but so far they haven't succeeded in finding him. The latest from Benjamin Creme is that he thinks Michael Lee Hill may be the candidate. Hill certainly fits the picture with abductions and little grey men. Another self-proclaimed candidate is Supreme David Rockefeller, about whom I wrote an e-book in 2009. The latest I heard from him was shortly after December 21, 2012, which is also his birthday. A friend of his, whom I know well enough to know he's honest, got a phone call from Supreme in a luxury hotel in Washington, D.C., where he sat and drank, looking out over a big pool inside the hotel room. He told his friend that it was time to skip all the public distractions like Facebook and similar, and shortly after he deleted his Facebook account, and no one has heard from him since then. However, when I was in touch with him in 2009 to 2010, he told me that one day he was going to exchange those jeans he had for expensive suits and start mingling with very rich and powerful people who were going to help him to power. A year later, he started dressing up considerably, and now he disappears from public exposure while in a luxury hotel in the US capital. People like Penre are oblivious of what is really going on behind the scenes. They are just dedicated to a mission which is orchestrated by those behind the scenes. They don't know the whole picture. And who is behind the scenes on this, by the way? Who is deciding which candidate is going to be chosen? Well, I certainly got a clue when I talked to the Illuminati in Great Britain. This group says they are the same group as Adam Weishaupt's Bavarian Illuminati, who once upon a time started the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and were part in orchestrating the American Revolution as well. Weishaupt was friends with both George Washington and other prominent founding fathers before he and his organization had to flee underground in Germany. Letters between Weishaupt and the founding fathers still exist. I always call this present group the Bavarian Illuminati, albeit they only call themselves the Illuminati these days, not to be confused with the global elite group so many people, including this author, have worked on exposing. Mike Hockney, who is the public writer in their society, told me that there is a very top secret society behind the scenes, which call themselves the Brotherhood of Shadows. Their main task is to produce these 12 candidates, who will then compete for the title of Maitreya, and the strongest man wins. According to the Bavarian Illuminati, the other 11 candidates will be killed. Nothing is said what will really happen to the chosen one. Will he be a human soul in a hybridized body, or will a Syrian soul take over? My guess is definitely the latter. Another more common reason for the abductions these days is cloning. The Cassiopaeans talk about this to some extent, and it has to do with the super wave, or the wave as many of the channeled sources call it, on which they say they're riding. We are going to spend a whole paper talking about this wave soon, and it's obvious that it's not only good star beings riding on the wave. The Cassios say that a lot of cloning of humans is taking place right now to prepare for when the wave arrives. When it does, they want to have a lot of soulless bodies waiting for them which they will try to enter en masse with the energies of the wave. However, they don't mention who these beings are that's going to enter en masse into these soulless bodies. When the Cassios are saying they, meaning negative beings, they are often talking about the Orion group, aka the Syrian Alliance. This goes hand in hand with my own conclusion, and my own conviction is that many beings of the Alliance have already entered such bodies and are walking among us. Behind the scenes, they are then preparing for the wave to arrive, apparently. 1.2.5 An interesting connection. In a session dated October 23, 1994, the Cassiopaeans reveal that they are not only the forerunner to the RA collective with a purpose to take off where RA ended, but they also claim to be RA. They reply to a question about where the RA material comes from with a short, us. This, to me, is quite an interesting statement, to say the least. If this is true, it is actually a mind expander and could explain a lot. I will later in this paper expand on the concepts and terms included in the Elohim material as well as both the RA material and the Cassiopaean experiment, which all lean towards that they are connected to the Syrians. The above statement from the Cassios, however, is quite a blunt one, confirming my hypothesis. This is also the reason why I have divided the channeled sources into different categories. This paper is exclusively dedicated to those who promote the harvest and are talking about the wave riders. Although I can't prove it 100%, I think I can prove without any reasonable doubt that these sources are connected to the Syrians, love and light or no love and light. Also, as the reader knows by now, I have spent quite some time listening to Pleiadian lectures and read all of Barbara Marciniak's books, and the Pleiadians have no problems admitting that they are connected to the Syrian Alliance, although they are supposedly a rebel group, and I believe them. My point here is that I know the Pleiadians pretty well, and the information they are giving us are well in line with that of the harvest channels I'm investigating in this paper, except that the Pleiadians are openly against the harvest and the concepts of STO and STS as well as galactic federations. They are basically the ones who inspired me to further look into these things, and so far I have found that they are right on the spot. However, being Sirians/Pleiadians in their essence, they still have the Sirian way of expressing themselves, and I recognize it in you too, Shamash, with whom I've had contact, but also in the harvest channels. 1.2.6 Orions, the transient passengers. The terms STO and STS, service to others and service to self, are extremely important to the sources we've covered so far, because they are the terms which we need to understand and live by if we want to ascend and be part of the harvest, according to them. Also, when talking about different star races, these channeled sources often speak of them in terms of STO and STS. So, when they mention the Orions, they say there are two types of Orions, the STO and the STS. The STS is the group that came to Earth and started manipulating human DNA, the Sirian Alliance, led by Enki, while the STO Orions are those of the Empire, acknowledging the Mother Goddess as the creator. The STO Orions are also, say the Cassiopaeans, called the transient passengers. This means that they are a unified thought form. The Orions thus could create matter from a unified thought form. This is how the Cassios explain it, and it makes me think about how the goddess created the galaxies, nebulae, stars, and planets, etc. But the interesting thing is that they say that the Orions created them, the Cassiopaeans. So, if the Cassiopaeans are us in the future, are they saying that we humans once upon a time were created by the benevolent Orions, i.e. the Mother Goddess and her helpers? As a matter of fact, they do. They are saying that our home, the home of mankind, is in Orion. Laura and her group are protesting, because they learned from Lissa Royal and Keith Priest and their Zeta Reticuli channeling that mankind's cradle stood in Lyra. The Cassios, however, say that this is not the case, and that one day we will see. Note, when a channeled source says they are us in the future, it doesn't necessarily mean they are humans in the future. A great example are the Pleiadians, who explain this phenomenon pretty well. They also say that they are us in the future, and still they are the Pleiadians/Sirians. How is that possible? Well, it has to do with genetic manipulation again. Because we humans have a lot of Sirian/Pleiadian genes in us, they say they are us in the past and in the future, even if this is a relative truth. U2 Shamash also claimed that we and they are the same. I am pretty sure the same thing goes for the three channeled sources I've investigated so far. Here is how the Cassiopaeans expressed it in regards to the Orions: A equals the Cassiopaeans, and Q equals the questioner, while L, within parentheses, is Laura Nightjadchik. A, in this part of your third and fourth density universe, specifically your galaxy, it is the region known as Orion that is the one and only indigenous home of human-type beings. Reflect on this. Indigenous home base, not soul locator. What you are most in need of review of is the accurate profile of alien data. Q, I thought that humans originated in Lyra and then a war broke out there and they ended up in Orion. A, Lyra is not inhabited. There have been homes in all places, but some were/are transitory, and some are not. Pay attention to Orion. This is your ancestral home, and your eventual destination. Here is the absolutely accurately accurate profile of Orion to follow. This is the most heavily populated region of your Milky Way galaxy. This is a region that extends across third and fourth density space for a distance as vast as the distance between your locator and it. There are 3,444 inhabited worlds in this region. Some are planets as you know them. Some are artificially constructed planetoids. Some are floating space barges. And some are satellites. There are primary homes, traveling stations, and incubator laboratories all in second, third and fourth densities. There are overseer zones in fifth and sixth densities. The name Orion is the actual native name, and was brought to Earth directly. Q, L, are the Orion STS the infamous red-headed Nordic aliens? A, yes, and all other humanoid combinations. Q, L, okay, if it started with the Nordic types, and that is where the other humanoid combinations came from, what genetic combinations were used for human beings. Black people, for instance, since they are so unlike Nordics. A. The Nordic genes were mixed with the gene pool already available on Earth, known as Neanderthal. The above information is coinciding with my own research as presented in Level 2. I don't know what they mean when they say that Lyra is not inhabited, because I know that at least Vega is, and the Vegans, resembling the Vulcans in Star Trek, are to some degree helpers of the Mother Goddess, although some fell for Lucifer's manipulating talk and rebelled against the goddess together with others, mentioned earlier. The Nordics, like I said before, are the STS Orions, i.e. Enki's group, who used the Neanderthals and later Cro-Magnon to create the human slave race. 1.2.7 The Giants of Ancient Times. Many alternative historians talk about a civilization of old, which dwelled in what we now call Antarctica. Now it's covered with layers upon layers of ice and snow, but at that time it was a very prosperous land, teeming with life. The Cassiopaeans say this land was called Gore, not related to the novels by John Norman or any science fiction novel or film, and that it was inhabited by a humanoid species, 18 feet tall. 19 When I first read about this in their transcript, I thought they were talking about the Namlu, the human race which was here when Enki and the Syrians came, but the Cassios say that this race was sexual, males and females, and they were not interested in space travel. The height may correspond, but the Namlu were androgynous. When comes to space travel, what the Cassios say, I would say is semi-correct if we refer to the Namlu. They were probably not particularly interested in space travel, either, being the guardians of the living library, but they were multidimensional, and could travel the universe by splitting their fire/soul. Therefore, I don't think the Cassiopaeans refer to the Namlu, but an older race. After all, there were several experiments carried out here long before the Namlu. Apparently, this ancient race of giants didn't only dwell in Antarctica, we later find out, but they could also be found in South America, in the Amazon. Here they walk about the legend of the Amazon warriors, and in that case they are referring to the Orions. However, they get it mixed up somehow, because the Amazon warriors were females. They say that the governments know about this race and have found remnants which they keep in warehouses somewhere, and they have no intention to tell the public. Albeit, we have seen pictures on the internet of extremely tall skeletons that archaeologists have dug up. Some of these may very well be hoaxes, but according to the Pleiadians, many of them are not. It's just the regular routine work of intelligence agencies to debunk everything that has to do with truth. 1.2.8 Some final statements from the Cassiopaeans. As the reader may have noticed, I am bringing up a lot of subjects told by the different sources, and some of them may not even be that relevant to what is to come, and I could just have skipped over it and not included it in the papers. However, I decided to write about it anyway, because a comparison between the different channeled sources is very rare, if it exists at all, so I thought it may be a good idea to present something like that here. It could be a subject for several volumes of books just by itself, and I could have decided to complete a project like that as well, but I went for this shortcut instead. Hence, I want to end off with a few last statements from the Cassiopaeans. Let's start the last part of this paper with some relevant information, however. In a transcript, Laura asked the source why the invaders hadn't invaded already full blast, when they have been present on the planet for hundreds of thousands of years. The answer that was given was that they don't want to rule us in 3D, because they are 4D beings. Therefore they want to rule us in 4D, once we've ascended. Well, that doesn't sound very encouraging to me. Of course, this already corresponds quite exactly with what I've said throughout my papers, although I don't use terms like third and fourth density when comes to evolution. What I hear, translated to what I've been saying, is that the Syrian Alliance want us to evolve so that they can take us over once our biology is more in line with their frequency. If we expand on this, and the Cassiopaean statement was made almost 20 years ago, the time for the invasion would be approximately now, something the Cassios have said as well, because the adequate amount of humans have expanded their consciousness enough, at least in biological terms, that it's easier for the Syrians' energy to take over, perhaps after having done certain adjustments. This means that those who believe the aliens are our saviors, or helpers, it doesn't matter, will be taken advantage of, because they are easy targets. The Syrian overlords usually have no use for the human souls who subscribe to the New Age philosophy when comes to the ascension/harvest process, other than for food, but they do have use for the divine human body template, which usually is more evolved than that of the regular person on the street. This is why it's so incredibly important that we stop agreeing with the Syrian mindset and start seeing through their deception and manipulation, or will be food, too. What the Cassiopaeans are basically saying here is that when we go from third to fourth density, the Syrian overlords are waiting for us, or for those who follow the path of those metaphysical sources, so they can take over the evolved bodies of these people and absorb the soul/fire in order for them to use it for their own purposes. However, it makes at least me very uncomfortable to hear that once we evolve enough for the Syrians to think we're ripe, they can harvest us. The word harvest does not have a very positive ring to it, does it? Why using that term if it's not exactly what it is, a harvesting of souls to use for very dark purposes? I want you to think long and deeply about it before you decide to go for something like this. But, you may say, if I just happen to be the kind of person who has a big heart and love to help others, won't I automatically go into this trap? After all, they say that if you are 51% or more Sto, you will be harvested. No, not necessarily, because they also say that you will not be harvested as long as you live in your current physical body. Once you die and go to the between lives area, you will be harvested if you fit into the category and put into a 4D body, but you can also refuse. You do that by saying that you disagree with this and the whole Syrian agenda. They may tell you that if so, you'll be sent to their planet of choice, which has a 3D vibration, and you will have to live another 75,000 years cycle there, under continuous slavery. Don't buy it. If you refuse their manipulation, they can't do anything, they won't inflict on your free will if what you want is appropriately expressed, and also what you don't want. Instead, you can go wherever you want to go and just turn your back to the whole thing. That is what I am going to do. Those in real danger, in my opinion, are those who buy into this whole love and light thing when comes to channeled sources, the ones that want to be harvested. The source is also contradicting itself when it says that we will be put into 4D bodies between lives. If the harvest process is natural, why do they have to provide us with bodies? This is an excerpt from the transcript so you can get a feel for it. To me it doesn't feel good at all. We have to be mostly Sto as a planet in order to move to fourth density, right? As a planet, yes. But I don't think that is gonna happen. I think that only a few will move to fourth density to an either already existing fourth density Earth, or that they will be instrumental in creating a fourth density Earth, and the rest will start the cycle over again in third density on a primitive Earth. The key lies in how many folks can be awakened to the balanced, positive-negative nature of cosmic reality. Could this be why the STS forces want to take us over before and right as we get to fourth so we can tip the scales in their favor? Pretty much it, in one sense. But, there is a more insidious reason. They are working very hard to prevent the graduation of any to fourth density. They want to keep all of Earth as their third density stockyard, and cafeteria of ethereal and physical food. But, if there is a movement to 4D, they want to be in charge of it. You can see the similarities with my concept of the splitting of the worlds and their ascension into the fourth density. Reading this quote above, however, gives me a good opportunity to also explain the difference. My concept is the machine kingdom, 3D, versus going back to nature, 4D. Eventually and gradually, over generations, the realities will split. I don't subscribe to a harvest, where the change will be pretty much immediate, and those who go to 4D will be put in a new box with limitations. Once we are multi-D, we are free to travel the universe as we please and visit different dimensions and densities. Almost no channeled sources bring up these important subjects. Anyway, it's true that the Syrians in certain terms want to prevent us from waking up in its real sense, but don't mind us waking up to follow the guidelines of these metaphysical sources or to the New Age religion, embracing the ascended masters, who are the Syrians in disguise, anyway. It's also true that they want to keep us as slaves in this 3D reality, but control it from 4D, if we follow the Cassiopaean logic. According to the Cassiopaeans, the Syrians of today control our brainwave cycles via HARP, headquartered in Alaska, so we'll stay either in 3D or 4D. This as well, is to me a giveaway, because they are bluntly telling us that the Syrians are controlling both 3D and 4D with their frequency machines. So my question is, how can channeled sources embrace the harvest, whether positive or negative, when they say, loud and clear, that the Syrians are waiting on the other side? See also the last paragraph in the indented quote above. If the Syrians want to be in charge of it, how can we prevent that from happening once we've agreed to being harvested? They don't tell us. Bottom line, dear reader, is that all these sources we listen to are following their own agenda. They are not doing this to be kind. We need to learn this, or we'll dig our own graves. Everybody has the right to do what they want to do, but at least I have thrown in my 2 cents. In the same session as the quote above, they also mention the infighting between interdimensional forces. They say it's ongoing, and it is happening here in Earth vicinity, some of it even in our own atmosphere. They are telling us that the abnormal weather changes we are now accustomed to are mostly fighting going on in other dimensions, and it is bleeding through and showing up as tornadoes, hurricanes, and flooding. This information also aligns with what I've independently received earlier from one of my anonymous sources. Also, Jupiter is already a 4th density planet, which in that case indicates that it would be a perfect outpost for the Syrians and others of similar frequency. They tell us moreover that 4th density planets appear as gas planets to 3rd density beings. This means, in that case, that the giant outer planets in our solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, are all 4D. This source also mentions 3 additional planets outside Pluto's orbit, so instead of 9 planets, if we include Pluto, we have 12, which is the number this universe is based upon, not 7, like the Cassiopaeans and a few others want us to believe. The number 7 is definitely a divine number, but this universe is not based on it, not from a human perspective at least. The additional planets, their distances from the Sun, their chemical composition, and their diameter, are allegedly as follows. Ni equals Montonanas, 570 billion miles from Sun, solid matter, 7,000 miles diameter. Nii equals Savurutarkar, 830 billion miles from Sun, 18,000 miles diameter, hydrogen, ammonia. Nii equals Bicalamanar, 1,600 billion miles from Sun, 46,000 miles diameter, hydrogen, ammonia. Pluto's distance from the Sun is about 3,666,100,000 miles, and its diameter is 1,864 miles in comparison, and the Earth is 93 million miles away and has a diameter of 7,900 miles. So, the next planet, outside Pluto's orbit, is of solid matter and only a little bit smaller than Earth. I've noticed that although the Cassiopaeans in certain terms subscribe to the idea of a feminine universe, they say that all gender and all duality disappears in 7th density, so in their perspective the universe is still neuter. They, like so many other metaphysical sources, forget that the Sun, and any star, including the clusters of suns making up the galactic center, all 7th density in nature, according to the Cassios, are creative forces on a very high level, and the creative forces on that level are feminine in nature and not neuter. The divine feminine is the ultimate driving and creative force in this universe and others. They also say that gravity is all that is, light is gravity, too, and on its highest level, God is gravity as well. And with that we're going to leave the Cassiopaeans for now. Part 2 will concentrate on other channeled sources who do not necessarily concentrate on the harvest and the superwave as a part of an agenda. The third level of learning is mainly focusing on the channeled sources and the galactic federations, as you will notice as we move on. This is definitely a level 3 subject and couldn't have been included in level 1 or 2, unless we wanted to make level 2 an extremely long level. The fact remains, the last part of this 3-level series of papers needs to concentrate on this subject in order to come full circle. Love. Wes Penre.